Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into something really unusual. It involves agriculture, organized crime, and just a staggering amount of money. We're talking $18.7 million.
It really is one of the strangest high-stakes thefts you could imagine. Nearly $19 million worth of maple syrup. In Quebec, that's basically liquid gold. And it was all stored in these thousands of, plain white barrels.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've looked at sources covering the Quebec maple syrup producers, the PPAQ as they're known now,
Right.
and specifically this infamous theft, 9,571 barrels stolen from their strategic reserve.
Right.
Our mission today is really to understand how this everyday commodity, maple syrup, the stuff you put on pancakes, became the focus of such a massive, months-long organized crime operation.
Yeah, it wasn't just some petty theft.
No, definitely not. This is where agricultural policy, really strict policy, created a kind of perfect storm, a vulnerability that crime syndicates noticed.
And to really get why it was such a target, you first need to grasp the organization that created it. The power structure is key. This whole crime hinges on decades of policy decisions.
Okay, so let's unpack that. How did this federation, the FPAQ, back then, get started? Where did this control come from?
Well, it began pretty simply. Back in 1958, some producers just got together, decided to, market their syrup collectively.
A cooperative effort.
Exactly. And that grew into the actual federation, the FPAQ, by 1966. But the really critical period, the part that sets the stage for everything that happened later, is between 1989 and 2003.
Ah, okay. And that's when they gained this almost legal cartel status.
That's the perfect way to put it. They massively expanded their powers until they had, essentially, total control over the market. And the cornerstone of that control was one absolute rule. Every single drop of maple syrup made in Quebec had to be sold to the Federation.
Wow.
They set the prices, they set the production quotas for every single producer, all 8,000 of them.
So they weren't just regulating, they were the market. If you farmed syrup, you had one customer, period.
That's the core dynamic. And this absolute control led straight to the creation of the target itself, the International Strategic Reserve, or ISR. They set this up around 2000.
The Strategic Reserve. And the idea was stability, right?
Yeah, stabilization. In practice, it meant every producer was forced to hand over 25%, a quarter of their crop each year, into this big central pool.
Why? What was the goal there?
Well, maple syrup harvests can swing wildly year to year, weather dependent. The reserve was meant to smooth that out, stabilize global prices, keep them high, and let the Federation make big deals with food companies.
Okay, but here's a key point, I think. The producers didn't get paid for that 25% right away, did they?
No, absolutely not. And that's crucial. They only got paid when the Federation eventually sold that specific syrup, which could be years down the line.
That delay must have been a source of tension.
For sure. But the system worked in a way, because maple syrup, if you store it right in these big barrels, keeps for a very long time. So you end up with this huge, slow-moving lake of incredibly valuable liquid.
Right, a lake of liquid gold. But this centralization, while maybe good for prices overall, it sounds like it created enormous pressure inside the system on those 8,000 producers.
Oh, the tension was definitely there. The Federation got a reputation for being, let's say, very strict about enforcing those quotas. Lots of producers felt squeezed, controlled.
And the penalties for breaking the rules.
Severe, designed to make you think twice, or maybe 10 times. If you were caught repeatedly selling outside the system or producing over your quota, the fines could pile up incredibly high. We're talking $500,000 Canadian dollars, sometimes even more.
$500,000. Imagine being a farmer. Maybe your family's been doing this for generations. You have a great year, produce extra syrup, and suddenly you're facing crippling debt just for being productive.
Exactly. It didn't just create grumbling, it created real resentment, potential enemies within the system, and things got heated. The sources talk about open conflict around 2010.
Conflict? Like what?
The Federation actually sent guards onto producers' land. In some cases, they seized entire harvests from farmers they call rebels. It was almost like internal policing to protect the price structure.
Wow. Now, the Federation argued this was all necessary, right? For the greater good. Fair prices, insurance against bad years.
That was their justification, yes, control for stability.
Right.
But in creating this giant centralized stockpile, they also, maybe unintentionally, created this enormous concentrated target, and there were warning signs.
Definitely. The sources point out there was an earlier theft, smaller, back in 2006. About 1,000 barrels worth maybe $1.3 million then vanished from another warehouse.
Unsolved.
Unsolved, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was covered by insurance. So maybe it didn't ring enough alarm bells. Then, fast forward a bit, the reserve nearly ran dry in 2008 because a couple of bad harvest years back to back.
Setting the stage. Precisely. Because then came 2011, a really, really good year. Suddenly, there's a massive surplus, way more syrup than usual. The Federation scrambled for storage. They ended up renting temporary space in this warehouse in Saint-Lô de Blandford.
A temporary facility holding millions upon millions in syrup. And the security situation there.
Shockingly minimal. According to the sources, no cameras, no alarms to speak of, just astonishingly lax for a commodity that, thanks to the cartel's own pricing power, was worth more per barrel than crude oil at the time.
Okay, so let's get into the heist itself. This wasn't like a smash and grab. It was planned, methodical, and it went on for months, right? Between 2011 and 2012.
Yeah, the timeline is incredible, several months, and the scale. The contents of 9,571 barrels, that's how they reached the $18.7 million figure. And as you'd expect, it really had to be an inside job, or at least involve inside knowledge.
Makes sense. These are just plain white barrels, right? Unmarked, stacked high, only checked once a year during inventory.
Exactly. They had a huge window of opportunity, and they exploited it brilliantly.
And the method, especially at the start, was just audacious. Can you describe that?
So phase one, they'd use trucks, sneak full barrels out of the warehouse, drive them off to some remote sugar shack. There, they'd siphon out the valuable maple syrup.
Okay, standard theft so far.
But here's the genius part, the trick. They would then fill the now empty barrels with water, and then drive them back and put them right back in the warehouse stack.
So they look the same, weighed roughly the same?
Pretty much. They were counting on nobody actually tasting or testing the syrup between the annual checks, just rely on the visual count and the weight feeling right.
That says a lot about how secure they thought the system was. But they didn't keep doing the water thing, did they?
No. As they got bolder, maybe felt more secure, they apparently skipped the refilling step. They just started siphoning the syrup directly out of the barrels in the warehouse into other containers, leaving the empty drums behind. Easier, faster, but riskier.
Okay, so now they have a different problem. A massive amount of stolen syrup. How do you sell nearly 10,000 barrels of hot maple syrup without someone noticing?
Right, you can't just put it on eBay. They needed distribution. The sources say it was trucked out in large quantities, mainly south into the U.S., Vermont especially, and also east into New Brunswick in Canada.
And how do they unload it?
Smartly, again, they broke it down. Sold it off in lots of smaller batches to legitimate syrup distributors, companies that bought and sold syrup all the time.
And these distributors didn't know.
Apparently not, according to the investigation. The stolen syrup was essentially laundered into the legal supply chain, mixed in with legitimate product. Made it incredibly hard to trace back.
Until the annual inventory check. That must have been quite a moment.
Yeah.
July 2012.
Yeah, imagine being the inspector, Michel Gavreau. He climbs up these stacks, probably done it dozens of times. He goes to lean on a barrel, expecting 600 pounds of resistance. And nothing. It's empty. The sources say he almost fell over. Just picture that reaching out, expecting solid weight and finding air. The clang of that empty barrel must have been loud in that quiet warehouse.
I can only imagine the sinking feeling, realizing that this wall of barrels might be, well, a facade. That kicked off a major investigation, obviously.
It did. And the police actually had some quick success. They managed to recover hundreds of barrels from an exporter over in Kedgwick, New Brunswick, that helped confirm the trafficking routes they suspected.
And the arrests weren't far behind.
Nope. Pretty swift, actually. Between December 18th and 20th, 2012, the police rounded up 17 men. Brought the whole operation crashing down.
So let's talk about who was involved and what happened to them. The consequences were pretty severe, especially for the ringleader.
Yeah, the courts definitely treated this as a major economic crime. The main guy, Richard Vallières, got sentenced in 2017, 8 years in prison, plus a fine of $9.4 million.
$9.4 million. That's enormous. And there was a catch with that fine, wasn't there?
There was a big one. The judge explicitly ruled that if he didn't pay that fine, his prison sentence would automatically extend to 14 years, an extra 6 years just for not paying up.
Wow. Did he fight it?
Oh, yeah. He appealed, and interestingly, in 2020, the Quebec Court of Appeal actually agreed the fine was too high. They lowered it way down to $1 million.
So a win for him.
Temporarily. The Federation and the prosecutors weren't having it. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And in 2022, the Supreme Court sided with the prosecution, overturned the appeal court, and put the original $9.4 million fine right back in place.
A clear message sent then.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just Valier's. Remember the insider connection? Avik Karan, his spouse, owned the warehouse they rented.
Right, the temporary facility.
He got 5 years in prison and a $1.2 million fine.
It seems like everyone involved faced serious consequences.
They did. It was treated like the organized crime it was. Richard Valier's father, Raymond, got jail time too, just under 2 years plus probation for possession. And then there was Etienne Saint-Pierre, the reseller in New Brunswick, who helped move the stolen syrup.
What happened to him?
He also got just under 2 years jail, 3 years probation, and a hefty fine, over $850,000. Even one of the truckers, Sebastian Jutras, ended up serving 8 months. They really dismantled the whole network.
So zooming out from the arrests and the sentences,
Yeah.
when you look at this whole story, what's the big takeaway? We started with, stolen pancake topping, but feels like a lesson in something bigger.
I think it really boils down to that tension we talked about earlier between extreme market control, this agricultural cartel trying to engineer stability and high prices, and just, well, reality. The Federation, aiming for stability, created this massive centralized pot of gold. But by doing that, by concentrating so much value in one place, and then, crucially, not securing it properly, they inadvertently made it the perfect target. The system designed to protect producers ended up creating this massive vulnerability. It attracted exactly the kind of organized crime you'd expect for something so valuable.
Which leads us to that final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. The Federation always said its tight control, the quotas, the reserve, it was all necessary. It was insurance, guaranteeing fair prices for its members. But was that intense structure truly the only way to achieve stability? Or, by creating this huge, poorly guarded stockpile of syrup, did they essentially make a heist of this size, this audacity, almost inevitable?